Hello, friends. In this session, we will see how we can do the hosting for web API or any web application on IIS server. So, in this session, we will go through what is an IIS server, then how we can configure IIS server on in our Windows operating system, as well as we will see how we can host our application on the IIS server in the debug mode as well as in the published mode. Okay, so these are the point we will cover in this session. So the prerequisites for this session is we must go through the video number 5 and 6 to go through before going through this session. Okay, because in this application sorry, in this video we are going to use the application which we have developed in this video series, video number 5 and C. So these are two videos which are from our web API video series, right? And video number is 5 and 6. Now let's start with the uh, web API hosting session. So first point is, what is an IIS web server? So it is web server runs on the Microsoft .NET platform on the Windows OS. While it is present to run IIS on Linux and Mac using Mono, but it is not recommended and will likely be unstable. So it is also available for other OS, but using Mono, kind of it is a tool. So, but it is not stable. Okay, so it is versatile and stable, and it is been widely used in the production for many years. So it is best for Windows and .NET application. Okay, Windows operating system with .NET application. So the current version number 10 is the most current version of IIS server. So here they have mentioned what is web server. So web server is the internet is good, and the internet cannot exist without web server, right? But what exactly is the web server? So a web server is a process for hosting web application. The web server allows an application to process message that arrives through specific TCP ports by default. For example, the default port for HTTP traffic is 80, and the one for HTTPS is 443. So using HTTP or HTTPS request, we can communicate with web server, and the web server is used to deliver us the web applications from the browser, right? So it can be accessed from mobile application using web APIs, all of these things. Okay. Also, we can access this from Fiddler we have seen previously, and we can access the same from our browser also. So you can go through these things if you want, but I will not recommend you to go through in detail. Okay. So here is the detail they have given, like how we can handle web requests. So this is the theory part. Make sure you guys will go through these things. So we will see how we can install IIS server, then how we can enable features for IIS, then installing .NET framework. So we have already we have installed Visual Studio 17 as well as 10 on the machine. So .NET framework version is already there installed. Okay. Then how we can host database, and the database connectivity we will not see in this session, because this is part of ADO.NET. Okay. Now first is IIS installation. So they have given here steps, but we will see these things in action. So to the IIS is already available in our operating system, in our Windows operating system. We have to just go to the control panel. So let's go to control panel. In control panel, we have to choose program and feature option. Okay. And from this program and feature option, we have to click on turn Windows feature on or off. Okay. Once you will click it, you will get all the feature which are available from Windows operating system, and these are not installed on our machine. Okay. So in this case, we have to find out Internet Information Service. Okay. So here I am expanding these things. So these are the all options we have from IIS server installation, right? So we when it is not installed on the machine, that time it will be not checked. Okay. So from this point, Internet Information Server to our last point is this. Okay. So these all checkbox will be unchecked if it is not installed on the machine. In my case, this is already installed on the my machine. And then if you have to install it, you have to select these all options. It will start from this tree, Internet Information Services, to it will end at this location, right? So you have to check all the check boxes, and after you have to click on OK button. So once you will click on OK button, it will install the IIS server on our Windows operating system. Okay. So it will take some time, and make sure you will not do will you will not you guys are not going to do like any other operations while it is installing on the machine. Okay. So you have to click on OK button. Once it is installed, you can check this inside. In you have to type here IIS. So you will type here IIS. It should show this shortcut, Internet Information Services. Okay. So once it is available, so this will be available in your machine. Okay. Once you will open these things, make sure these all options are there. In the video, you can see that we have a ASP.NET, then FTP, then managers, right? So these all options should be installed here, right? Then only it will work. So this is our IIS server, and these are some options like site, then default website, and application pool. So we can install, sorry, we can host our web application inside this default websites. Okay. So I'm sure you guys must have understood how we can like configure IIS on our Windows operating system. Okay. Now let's see how we can host our web application on the IIS server. So in the previous session, as I mentioned in video number 5 and 6, we have created some applications. So I'm opening one of this application. Make sure whenever you are hosting an applications, you have to open Visual Studio in Run as Administrator Access. Okay. So this is the application Web API jQuery. So this was like combination of Web API and MVC. So we have created in our previous sessions. Okay. And here what we have to do is we have to host this application in the debug mode. So to host this application in the debug mode, we have to like we have some options here. But before going into these things, we will see when we run this in the .NET environment, what kind of URL it generates. Okay, so let's run it. Okay, you can see that it has created URL with like localhost colon 51367, right? So this is the URL runtime generated using in the environment of .NET framework, right? And it is the URL generated from .NET framework. Okay. So when we will host it, so that in that case, what will happen? Our IIS will generate a URL, or we can give the any specific new name to our URL. This will be a unique domain which is hosted on the server, and from next time the application will run from that URL only. Okay. So this is the this is the URL which is generated from our .NET framework or our Visual Studio, right? Okay, I'm stopping an application. So let's host this application in the debug mode on the IIS server. To do these things, what we have to do, we have to right click on our project. Okay. We have to select properties option. And from here, we have to select web tab. There are multiple tabs. Okay, web tab. Inside this web tab, we have a server section. And inside this, we have here one drop down, which is having these three values. So from this, we have to select local IIS. Okay. Once you will select local IIS, it will like shows the default URL which is generated by the Visual Studio, and with this URL, it will be going to host the application in the debug mode or in the development mode on the IIS server. Okay, so this is the default URL. You can change it if you want, but I am keeping it the same. Okay, so once it is there, you have to click on create virtual directory. So it should show message like the virtual directory was created successfully. If you will get this message, it is mean that it is successfully created on the IIS server. Once it is done, you can close it from here. Okay, now we have to find our application with this name in the IIS server, web API jQuery. So let's go to IIS. So here I am, right? Now let's refresh this first before looking into that. So we will refresh it. So you can see that web API jQuery application is got hosted here, right? And if you will right click these things and will say explorer, you will find this is the location of application. Let's see if the same application location is for our the application which we are working in. So right click here and go to open folder in the file explorer. So we can see that both are the same locations, right? So now our application is hosted on the IIS server in which mode? In the development mode, and both are pointing to same location, our Visual Studio and our this IIS hosted application, right? If you see here, we can see these all things which are in our project, right? If you explore these things, you will find this our controller name, these things, right? So this is how we can like host our application on web API, sorry, IIS server using our Visual Studio. If you have to run it, you can simply right click on the your project name and say browse. You have to right click and find manage application and say browse. So now I think it will run it. Okay, so you can see that now it is running with the URL which is created when we hosted the application, right? Okay, now it is available, right? So now this URL is available, and whenever I will hit that URL from the browser, it will get that application will get accessed, right? Now if I will run this application from here, it will also use the same URL to execute that application. Okay, so you can see that it is the same URL it is using. Now it is the project in the development mode, but it is running from the IIS server. It is not running in the our Visual Studio environment anymore, right? So you can see that it is using same URL from IIS as well as from Visual Studio application, right? Now one more thing I would like to tell here. Even you will close your application, means your this application. I am closing it. So I have closed it right now. Okay. So still you will be able to access this using the URL which is created, right? So you can see that we are able to access this, right? Okay, so we are able to access these things, right? Let me open this application again. Make sure always open this in the administrator access, right? This is the application. Okay. Okay, so from properties we have like hosted this on the IIS server. If I have to change the setting, means again we want to run this from our Visual Studio, you can simply change the setting from here. You have to select IIS Express, okay, and then close it. Now it will, in this case, it will run from Visual Studio settings, okay. Now you can see that it is using Visual Studio URL, right? This is different from the hosted URL. Okay, let me run this again. So if we hit this URL, we get this data, right? But in this case, if I will stop it, what will happen? Will it access or not? What do you say? So I have URL which is generated from Visual Studio, and I'm trying to hit this. So you can see that it is loading, but it is not able to find this URL available on the browser, right? It is because of what? Because it was created runtime using this Visual Studio, and because of we have stopped this application, so it is no more accessible, right? So that's why it is not able to access it. If we will close it, anyway it will be not accessible, right? Let me again bring this setting to our IIS server. Okay, so again I have brought this setting to IIS server. We have this URL already available here, right, on the IIS. Now we have these things here settled, right? Now how we can access these APIs from, what we can say, from Fiddler using this URL. The thing is simple. We have to just use this URL instead of the URL which we were using previously from the Visual Studio. Then slash. If I go to our web API config, our URL pattern is like API slash controller slash action, right? So after this URL API, then slash my action controller name is what? This is my controller name, right? And slash, this is my action name. This is what I have to access. So this is how our URL will be if we have to call it and say hit enter. So we got 200, right? Okay, we got it. So it came late actually, but we got it. So it is showing that we have accessed these things, JSON result from this web API using the IIS URL, right? So we have used here IIS URL. So this is how we can work with this URL, right? Okay. Now there is one more way we can host an application to the IIS server. So this was like development mode. Now we will host an application in the publishing mode. Okay. So in the development mode, we have an access, we have an ability to like debug the application. For example, if it is running and if we have a, debugger here, let me show you these things. For example, if I have debugger here, in this case, what will happen? If I am calling this API from Fiddler or from any browser, I am able to debug it. But the condition is what? Only the application should be running, right? So that is the benefit of having like IIS hosted application in the development mode. Okay, so we can have that ability to like debug the application in the development mode. Okay, now as I said, there is other way we can host an application on the server. So what is that way? So this way is like what we can do here. We can in the solution explorer, we have to click on the right project. We have to right click on the project name. So this is my project name, and then we have to publish the application. So I will hit the publish button, right? Then next thing is what? I have to select folder profile from here. Okay. So here we will have some like different options. If you can see that when I clicked on new profile, in your case, when you will do the first time, you will directly get this window automatically populated. Okay. From this window, you have to select folder. Okay. And from folder, you can see that it is asking for choose the path. So you have to select a path. So in my case, what I am going to do is on desktop, I am going to create one folder here, desktop. So what I would say, publish new batch. Okay. So this folder is not available on the desktop. So it will ask us to create. Do you want to create this folder? So you have to say yes. Once it is done, from here we have to select publish. So we have to click on publish button, right? Once you will hit the publish button, it will publish the code on the given location. The location is given here on the desktop, publish new batch. So let's go to desktop. So this is the folder where the application is published. Now if you compare this published application with our Visual Studio application, you will find the difference. Like we have here access of classes of or all of these things, right? So we have the access of classes, but in this case we don't have these classes here, right? We cannot find the controller folder because all classes are like archived in the our what we can say this DLL. So we will see what is DLL and these things in our upcoming sessions in our C Sharp or .NET Framework session. So our all classes are now zip into that DLL. Okay, these are not available. We have available only what a script file, client scripting files. We have available views, our HTML views. So here you will find your our view. This is my in master. I have a item master view, right? So these things which are loaded on the IIS server are on the browser, I would say, are available in the uh, published mode. Okay, classes are also there, but these are archived in the DDL file. Okay, in content you will find your bootstrap files. Now, how we can host these things on the IIS server? So we have to copy this code. I am copying whole code inside that folder. Then we have to go to your C drive, and when you will install the IIS server, that time you will get this inetpub folder created in your machine C drive. Okay, so you have to go into the inetpub folder, and inside this we have to find www root folder. Okay, here we can create a new folder. We have to create new folder. I will call it web api jquery underscore new batch. Okay, so inside this folder I am putting this code which was published. Okay, we have to say continue here for all the files. Okay, now we have copy pasted that published code here and it is available now, right? So now we have to go to IIS server. So let's come to IIS server. Here inside default we have to refresh this once. Once you will refresh it, you will get that for that folder here. So you have to just right click on the folder and say convert to application. Okay, so it will show this window, and it will show your site name. It will be like web api underscore jquery new batch. Okay, so you can change this if you want. And here it should show sorry, from here test setting it should show authorize for both the these options. Okay, you have to click on OK button here only. So once you will hit the OK, it will convert into the IIS hosting application. Again, if you have to run this application, you have to just right click and go select manage and browse this. Now you can see that localhost slash web API jQuery underscore new batch, the URL which is created, and it is like accessible in the browser, right? So this is how we can access the this hosted application. Now there is no connection of this. In this case, there is no connection of this Visual Studio application and this published hosted application. It is the published code and it is available at this location. It is the separate code, right? If you will make any changes in the Visual Studio code, it will not reflect there because this is the separate code which is published code. We can say that even your Visual Studio is not available. I am closing it. This application will definitely get called from anywhere, right? If I am calling it from different browser, you can see that it is available, right? Now, if I have to call this from what we can say Fiddler, I will simply what I would do, I have to replace this URL, right? Let me replace this URL and I will get the result. Let's hit the URL. Okay, we got this result here. Okay, and we got this result also in the JSON format. Let me call this from browser. Let's see if it is accessible from browser or not. So we can see that it is also accessible on browser also, right? Now, one more thing, what we have to see, can we access this URL from different application? So answer is yes, but to access these things, what should be there? Let me open the application first. So to access this URL from the other application, we must have the CORS enabled in our web API application, right? So in the previous session, we have seen how we can enable CORS, these things, right? I am, okay, let it be there as it is. So we have like in the previous session we have seen how we can install that NuGet package for enable CORS, and then we have made some setting inside this web API config. So we have added this code, right? This one, and then it is available to access from the other servers also, right? So let's try to do these things using other web server. So let's try this. Let's open one MVC web application. So in the previous session, we have created one MVC client application, right? And from that client application, we have already like accessed web API, but we have accessed this using our this is my application, web application. Okay. So previously we have accessed this using our what we can say our browser, sorry, our Visual Studio created URL, right? Now here is the URL which was so this is the URL actually. This was the URL previously we used in our application, right? So this was created from a browser. Now what we have to do, we have to use uh, this URL which is created from our web sorry hosting, from our IIS server hosting, right? So I'm putting this previous code in the comment for reference, and from here I am putting this new URL. Okay, so let's try this with this URL. So we are calling we are going to call web API jQuery get method. So we have two method here with get method name, right? But other method is having ID as a parameter. So we can call this by putting adding a query string in the our what we can say our URL, right? Now let's have a debugger here. If it is no, this application is not running, this debugger will not get hit. Okay, we will get the result anyway, right? But only the debugger will not get hit, right? So this is my client application. So what we did in the client application previously, we added one master controller, right? And inside that master controller, we added one action name, that is item master. And from that item master, we added new view. So this is my view item master.cshtml, which is available in the view inside master folder, right? So this is the HTML code, and inside the head section we have added jQuery reference, and inside we have added one script tag, and inside that we have that document.ready function which is having ajax call code. So type is the get because the method we are going to call is the get, right? And this is the URL. So now we are calling from our IIS URL, right? IIS hosted URL. Okay, so these are some other parameter for the same, right? So let's run the application. So now we are calling MVC client app, and we are calling this URL from web API, right? So here what we have done in the success, we have taken the result in the alert box. So if okay, so we got that alert here, right? So we got this alert here, right? So it is mean that we got this result successfully. If you will like open the debugger mode, developer mode, you have to click F12 on the browser. So in the network, you will find your Ajax call request, and you will find that URL. Okay. So if you see, we got that get method here, and if you see the URL in the header section, this is our URL which we created from our IIS server, right? And from this we got this response. So this is our response, right? This is our JSON response. If you will uh, run this application, still the debugger will not hit because we are using the URL which is we have created using publish code, right? And not develop this development code, right? Okay, we cannot run the two sites from the IIS because for this also, let me stop it. Let me stop these things. I will tell you why it is not happening. Because we have already this site is hosted on the IIS, so we have to disable it, right? Or we have to remove these things. then only we will be able to access our this URL. So this URL is created from our this web API application in the development mode, right? In the properties, you can see that this is the URL. Now we have like stopped other URL. So let's try if it is works or not. So we have to stop this anyway, right? Then only we will be able to access this URL, right? Let's see if we can do this. Okay, so we cannot do that. But what is the best thing we can do? We can run it from here. And this is the URL which was from the development mode. But we are not able to what we can say run the Visual Studio in the same time because two URLs are accessing from the same web server, right? So this is possible, but in case of we have a like different TCP IDs or what we can say different uh, our protocols, right? Let's try by changing this setting if it is possible. Let's run this. Now it will run, but it will create Visual Studio URL, right? Okay, we it got accessed. Now let's run from that URL which was created from Visual Studio, right? So we are not able to access this because it is disabled from our what our Visual Studio from this setting, right? From properties we have like unselected this. That's why it is not accessible, right? So we cannot run two hosted application at the same time from the same IIS if we don't have the different TCP protocols for each website. Okay, so we have to disable this or we have to remove it because we can disable the entire this section, not only that site. Okay, so this is how means these are the two different ways we can like host an application on the IIS servers. Okay, and this is how we can access it from our client server by putting that URL. Okay, now let's come to the documentation. So here is the documentation they have given how we can like configure your IIS server, then how we can host an application here. But I will suggest you guys this document is not more understandable, so you guys go through my video, okay, for do these things, okay. And yeah, this all is in this document. Okay, okay, so we are done with the web API hosting and IIS configuration session. If you have any question you can ask.